Welcome to TriEssence martial art channel, Kung Fulosophy, where we discuss topics of Chinese martial arts with a touch of either science and or philosophical understanding. The concept we're going to talk about today is that possibility does not equal probability. Anything you know about this topic?
Not that I can say. It's very often that people use the two terms interchangeably. Actually.
Yes. So let me give you an example, right, of an actual event in history. So long ago, I can't remember exactly what year it was. The Europeans first came to northern Africa, and they discovered a cave in northern Africa, and they discovered cave paintings of native African people from hundreds or possibly thousands of years ago, right? Those people who painted them, that particular tribe already extinct. So these Europeans look at these paintings, and based on their own understanding of their own culture, they naturally assume that these cavemen essentially recorded their hunt. They saw cave paintings of people and animals and stuff like that. So they naturally assume that these are a record of what they did, because in their own culture, they would record things through picture. However, many years later, researchers eventually realized that they were wrong, that in that native culture, they don't have a habit of recording their hunt. They believe if they draw these pictures out before the hunt, it will influence the outcome of the hunt. So instead of being a record, it is a wish. They draw what they want the hunt to be like and hope that real hunt will be like what they painted. And this is an example to show you that just because some theory is possible doesn't mean it's actually true, right? Doesn't mean it's probable. And this is very important in Chinese martial art, because in today's world, a lot of the knowledge has been lost. And instead of trying to figure out or just give up, a lot of martial art teachers are trying to reinvent what this knowledge are. So you basically take a result and then you try to explain why it is there. And this often leads into problems, which is why Chinese traditional martial arts are struggling in this modern era to compete against other combat sports. So here we're going to watch a video as an example to illustrate this point. As always, I have nothing against the creators of these videos other than the fact that what they're saying is incorrect. So basically, this video is about single whoop. Now we're going to talk about single whoop in this video, but what we're going to talk about is not restricted to just single whoop, right? It can be applied to a variety of Chinese martial art problems that we have today. So the first problem with this person in particular is that he is interpreting an application from a book. Okay? This is a big problem because in China, all kinds of people write books. And it doesn't mean that whatever is written in a book must be true. Unlike in the West, with stuff that is being heavily controlled by academics, right? Like medical science, physics, law. We have a whole body of people that monitor what's going on, right? You write a book, you have a peer review, right?
Well, it's for journals, which is what academic writing is normally called. There's a proper structure. You need to cite. There's a bibliography. You need to get citation, etc., etc. And then it's reviewed by a governing body.
So this is less likely to be wrong, or at least to be completely wrong, right? Whereas in China, if you have the money and the connection, you can write a book. And there's no governing body, or there is a governing body, but they're not qualified enough to see what you write is correct, which is why if you actually spend your time reading through Chinese martial art books, everyone says a different story. Right? Single whoop, for example, you can find 100 different applications to this one single move. And that makes no sense. Because if single whoop comes from one source, it should, by logic and reasoning, have one application. When everybody has different understanding of a singular move, it means nobody actually knows what else is going on. Okay, so let's look at this move and the example that this guy's given. So he's basically doing this from a chain stop perspective. So you start from 六分四 B, right? It's here, there, 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 and there. Of course, I'm doing my version of single move on chain stop. He does it slightly differently. Just give you an example.
Se tu spingi, ecco, tu mi spingi verso di me, tu mi spingi così, io non posso farla così, mi verrà così. Poi lì faccio, nei tempi antichi, plesso solare, ma avevano le mani come quella signora che ti ho detto.
So according to him, the first thing here, right, he thinks that basically what happened is someone is pushing on my elbows, both here, like this. And then from here, he turns and he stabs the guy. Solar plexus or throat, it doesn't matter. So it's here, and then he stabs the guy. Problem to this interpretation is that firstly, why was somebody pushing your elbow like this? This is the weirdest attack I've ever came across, right? One of the weirdest. Obviously in the book that's what is illustrated, but that's the point. The guy who wrote the book probably had zero idea of what actually is going on. And this is a very good example of you having a result and trying to fit the reason. We know that the move did this. And then you're like, okay, so how can I explain this? Okay, well, I can explain it if somebody pushes it. But no, why would somebody push like this, right? If somebody were to grab my elbow, they will grab it and then push in. At which point, if I turn, they will still have control over the elbow. So if I try to do that move, he will just yank it in here and further trap my arm. So there's very little reason why someone would push the elbow like this but not control the elbow in order for you to slip through. Which is why, and this is one of the big problems, right? Not just to this video, but to a lot of stuff, is that they have very weird explanations that seemingly make sense, but if you really think about it, the moves they are countering is very unlikely to happen. And that's why these martial artists can't actually fight, because they spend all days explaining their applications through these weird encounters that almost never happen, and when we get into a fight, the guy will just hit him in the face, right? There's none of this weird trash. Which is why what they practice and what in reality differs so much, and that's why they can't fight. So that's the first thing. Let's look at the second portion.
Mamma, Maong, guarda cosa fa. Con una mano sola ti ha intrappolato, dopo tu sei abile, cerchi il gomito, ma se mi spingi bene, rimani, ecco, questa volta è andato abbastanza bene.
So in this portion, he's basically talking about the next part, which is here, right? So according to him, someone is pushing onto his chest, and what he does is he comes over here and he joint locks this arm. Problem to this, firstly, is that he actually misread the book. Okay, I actually think he can't read Chinese. He's only looking at the pictures, which makes it worse because if you can't even understand what's written on the book, he doesn't understand the book, and it's very irresponsible to teach application just by looking at that picture. Okay, and I can say that because I can read Chinese. I read the text. The text actually says that the picture you see it comes to the side, right? The picture is indicated of a guy here. Okay, basically it's like a joint lock, and which is why he assumed that it's based on someone pushing you, and I come here, and then I lock him down either this way or whatever way. The problem is on the text, it actually says, when someone grabs your right wrist with his right wrist, and then you hold his right wrist, and then apply this joint lock, and then straighten him with your elbow. So that's actually what is said on the text, which shows that his interpretation is actually not even correct based on the book. And furthermore, right, if somebody is pushing you over here, by default, if it's any good, you'll be already applying force to you, and you have to compete against incoming force. So there's not enough time for you to just try to do this. You're already being pushed off. So you can't actually even let somebody touch your chest, and that's the essence of internal martial art, right? I've said this in the past. Internal martial art, you are like a virgin. You can't let people touch your body. Okay, if you get touched, you're already lost. anyone who's decent, like an old Yiquan teacher, if he touches your chest, you're already 2 feet off the ground and you're already falling back. There's no time for you to let somebody touch your chest and then do a lock. And if you're not touching your chest, well, how are you going to lock the arm? Right? If I'm on the process of touching, you can stop my arm from touching you, but you're not going to be able to do a lock because the hand is not controlled. It's free to move. And once you touch, it's too late because, just give you an example, right? Just see the time it takes me to touch him and the time he loses balance. You can't have enough time to grab my joint and put in a lock with that short amount of time, which is why this doesn't work. Now, the only explanation in the book is slightly better, right? It's about grabbing the wrist, and then you hold him so he doesn't run away, and then you kind of yank him in a joint lock. The only problem here is that while I'm doing this, what he's doing with his other hand, you could hit me in the face, right? It takes time for you to do 1, 2. Sure, you can do it fast, but can it be faster than the hook to your face? And this motion doesn't exactly hinder his control of this arm. It's not like if I do it this way, okay, then at least that hand is to an extent controlled. But if I'm along him this way, he can very easily hit me right on my face. So that's the problem with the application recorded in the book. And furthermore, here's a huge logic problem, okay? If the person, whoever invented this move originally, we don't know who it is, but let's just imagine a person who invented this move, and he comes here and takes this as a singular continuous motion, okay? How likely would it be that each section does something completely different? Okay, it might not be an issue if you don't think about it, but the thing is, it's very counterintuitive to have a fluid motion, a section of the move, but every segment is something unrelated. Because the first explanation, this is unrelated to this, and is unrelated to the next part and the next part. And would you agree that logically speaking that is unlikely to happen?
Yeah.
From a designing perspective, if I design this as a fluid move, it's not going to be that I have 4 different applications that do 4 different things, but somehow I realize they can flow into one move.
Well, unless you're the attacking part, but even then, reactive moves is it relies on what the other person.
I'm thinking about just designing a form to have 4 things that are not related, but you want to link them into a singular move.
Yeah.
It's unlikely to be the mentality of someone who designs a form, right? So what this shows is that it's more likely that this interpretation in this particular book is just someone who's looking at the result and trying to come up with an explanation to why he moves that way. He knows the move is like this. And then he tries to figure out what the applications are, and that's the only reason why he'll come up with, this is something for something else, this is something, and then this is something else. It's trying to reverse engineer the result into the original reasoning. But the problem is, like I gave an example of the art of cave painting, most of the time you can't get to the original result by doing this. Because there are so many different possibilities, right? It's like, if a shoe fit, doesn't mean it's your shoe. It could be somebody else's, right? And that is the problem.
Questo chiudere, prende e va a colpire. Io nei tempi moderni colpirei i linguini. Nei tempi antichi si colpiva addirittura il plesso solare.
And the next part is talking about controlling this hand and then striking someone there. The problem with his demonstration there is that he's not controlling this elbow. So if you look closely, his student's elbow is like this. And if your elbow is like this, if a guy's competent, he's not going to let you reach through. You can't, right? Impossible. If you look in the book, it actually shows someone's elbow like this. If you get a guy's hand over here, then you can strike him, okay? So the one in the book makes more sense than what he's demonstrating. So again, it shows that he doesn't even understand the books that he's teaching from. Like this, it doesn't work, right? And that's why initially he tried to do this, and then we try to go lower, and then the student has just let him. But obviously, if he doesn't let me, it doesn't matter how low you go, right? If his elbow is here, you're not going to be able to strike him. and he does this and he comes up, same problem. If you come under here and this guy's elbow is in the way, you're not going to be able to reach it. Now the problem with the book's version is obviously, if I get somebody's arm like this, then yes, I can I can strike him here, I can strike him there, I can do a lot of stuff. Problem is how you're going to get somebody's arm to this position. That's the real question. And if I do get his arm to this position, I could very simply just apply force and knee him in the face. Or it's like the problem isn't what to do after you get the guy in the position, it's how to get the guy in this position, right? And again, somebody throwing punches in your face, you're almost never going to be able to get the guy in this position. Okay, it's not going to happen. So there's another example of something that is possible, but most likely it will not happen. Therefore, it's not probable. So that is explanation of this, right? The single word part. The next part, he talks about the leg.
Perché quando mi chiudo tu ti fai male o no? E poi spara non solo sul ginocchio, leggermente sopra, da poterlo far proprio cadere. Mi chiudo tutto e poi sparo sul ginocchio così da fare.
So his explanation, he says basically, when somebody kicks you, you block and you kick him, and then you come down and do a strike. While this move in itself is applicable, right? There are styles that the defender kick and then try to do a counter kick. Problem is, that's most likely not what the single whoop step was designed for. Reason we know this is because in the form of any lineage of chain style, right, excluding fake one, but also authentic lineages, they do it differently, start from style from lineage, but the step is always sliding on the ground. If this was an actual kick, why don't you just do it higher and then do the next part? Another problem is, if this was a kick, if this was a kick, it makes the next movement very awkward because you're coming with a downwards momentum. So what makes sense would be a downward strike. It would not be a kick this way, a downward momentum, and a horizontal strike. It's just, it's not productive. You have to first do the downward momentum and then initiate this, right? So if someone were to actually create this move and he understands the body mechanic of how human works, he would rather do this and have a vertical move to follow with the momentum. And this is exactly why in the form nobody lifts their feet this high and then drop down like this. Instead it's to the ground and slide and then the hand comes out. What most likely is a move designed to trip somebody's leg. So instead of trying to block a kick, it's just that when he's standing here, I'm going to try to do this to him, and then as he's unbalanced, I'm going to slide in and then try to throw him off balance. So looking at my first take of the video, this section I didn't explain quite well, so I'm going to give it another try. Right? So whenever we do anything with our body, we create some kind of momentum, which then in turn affect what we can do next with our body. So that's what we call a flow, right? When you're doing a motion, a set of motion, they have to be in the correct flow, otherwise you are hindering your own progress. So in this case, what the person is doing is a side kick. So he's doing a block and then a side kick. But notice the problem is, when after he block and side kick, he doesn't put the leg back, he lands straight away. And when you do this, you're creating a downwards momentum, which is in conflict with a hand that goes horizontal plane. Because this is a vertical motion, so kind of because your body is like this, so as you drop straight away, it throws your body upwards, but at the same time you're trying to create a horizontal motion, and that's what is the problem. The two motions doesn't actually fit, it doesn't contribute to each other or complement each other, it goes against each other. So now you might think, okay, but you have seen a lot of martial art moves where they'll do a kick and a follow up with a hand. But if you examine them properly, there's always something that either applies to the same direction of momentum or it mitigated before it does the next motion. So for example, in Ba Ji, there's a move where you kick and then you do a back fist. And that is a good example because you kick and as you land, your body is coming from a total position to upright, and your hand accelerates with the same plane of motion, and that obviously goes with the previous momentum, and thus the first part of the motion accelerates the second part of the motion. And if you look at something else, for example, if I do a side kick and a Bruce Lee-like jab, it will be a side kick and then a jab, right? So the reason that's possible is because the side kick is kicked and pulled back, and in doing so, I've already counted my own momentum, and I'm in neutral again. So therefore, when I land, I'm able to throw another motion that is completely different. The same goes if you're looking at classical Chinese martial arts, where they do a front kick and then into a side stance punch. Again, it's going forward, and the momentum's already stopped, and then you rotate, and the punch is also going forward. So the punch and the kicks are in the same direction. Again, it's one motion complementing the momentum of the previous. Now the reason the single warp application is a problem, like I just said, is because you're first doing a kick this way, and he's not pulling his legs back to neutralize the momentum. If you watch closely, he block, kick, and he tells you to land straight away. And that's why it actually is in conflict with the next movement that he's about to do. Of course, in the same setup, you could do a block, a kick, pull the leg back, land, and then do this, and you wouldn't be in conflict with the previous motion. However, this then runs into the previous problem that we've already been talking about, which is that every small piece of this whole movement is meant for something completely different. And that is a logically incorrect problem that we're dealing with a lot of these martial arts application interpretations, right? I mean, and if this was the case, then in the form, right? I mean, the form of the thing is this way, but then they should have done this, do a kick, bring it back, then step, and then do this. But why don't they do that? It's because this was never meant to be a kick, and whoever says this is a kick is just somebody who's looking at the result and trying to find a viable explanation, not the actual correct one. And obviously, if you then look at the follow-up, it makes no sense at all, right? If I were to block somebody's kick, then I kick him. If the kick succeeded, the guy should be falling down because I'm kicking his supporting leg. If the kick missed, then he's probably moved back away from my kicking range. In which case, if I just land like this, it will give me nowhere. It wouldn't allow me to trap his legs, which is what this next movement was supposed to be for, right? But if the first one's already a kick and I missed, this would be stupid because he would have been further than I can reach. And if I did kick him on supporting leg, he'd be falling on the ground. I wouldn't need this move. So it doesn't make sense if you look at this motion's interpretation and you compare it to what happens next. It's again two completely different moves that then somehow the creator of this form or style merged four completely unrelated applications into one move that happens to flow. Right? That is the strangest part of these type of applicational interpretations. And which is why, even though they seem viable or possible, isolated, if you look at them as a whole, you can see that, and use some logic of course, and you can see that it's very unlikely that the founder or the inventor of this style intended to be interpreted in this way.
Guarda Luca cosa lo dico adesso. Passo da sotto e poi vado giù.
Now the last part, right, the final move. The way he explains it is to catch somebody's arm here, and then you come through and you throw him off balance, either from the bottom or from the top. Now this move in itself is fun, right? It can work if you get yourself into that position. But again, the problem is how you're going to get yourself in that position. How you're going to grab hold of this hand in the first place and have him not trying to sidestep you when you try to come through. Right? When you try to do this, he can just sidestep it and hit you in the face. So like I've explained in the last video, in Kung Fu Debunked, we talk about the fallacies of the side stance. And this again comes to that same problem. this would work if he's also using a side stance. If I go back 300 years to the early Qing dynasty, where the Chinese martial art people all fight in a side stance, then this approach, if Pirata can catch his arm, this approach here and then there, it might work. But in this modern era, where everybody don't fight in the side stance, it's very, very unlikely for this to work. Which is why I don't even see the point in teaching an application that's severely outdated. In today's world, you're going to deal with this trend or untrend. You're going to be dealing with people who are going to come off swinging their fists. You're going to jab, hook, uppercut. That's what you're going to be dealing with. You're going to be dealing with guys who's going to fight you like Bruce Lee, right? So even though this can work if you put yourself into that exact condition, it's so unlikely to happen in real life that I see no purpose in even teaching this application. And the way he tried to go into the application was through a push hand. It's also problematic. So in his example, you are in a push hand position, okay? Everybody doesn't know push hands. We're not gonna, well, he doesn't know this version of push hands. We're not gonna imitate that. But basically he's saying that when he's pushing, then you go here, you step, and you do that. The problem with this approach, okay, is that in push hand, everyone is sensitive. The moment you change, someone's gonna change to adapt to you. Which is why in push hand, people don't make big movements, right? In more practical push hand, you'll see that when we step, it's very small steps, very small adjustments. And through these small adjustments, you try to find openings that you can destabilize a guy or make an attempt to attack him. However, this explanation of the move, you literally have to step the back step. You first have to lead his arm this way, and then lead this leg forward, and then do a throw. This move is so big and telegraphed. Anyone who knows how to do push hand will spot it the moment you can lead his hand away, and he will basically counter this part. For example, he can push into you, or he can readjust himself so that you can't do it. So the minute of thing that someone can do, the moment you start trying to attempt that. So the chance of you being able to grab his arm and step through and do this move against someone who is good at push hand is next to nothing. So not only does it not work against the modern style of fighting, where people throw punches with both arms, it also doesn't work against people who are good at doing push hand. The only thing that it's good for is to show off to your own students who are misinformed and doesn't actually know what else is going on in the realistic practical method of Chinese martial arts. So to recap, something that is possible doesn't make it probable, right? And if you were to use logic and reason to just look at the explanation, it's very unlikely for the creator of this one particular move to have 4 or 5 unrelated applications crammed into one flowing move. It's not logical, right? It's not how people inventing martial art would actually come up with. If you look at the styles that are better understood, so by that I mean, Tai Chi, the applications are pretty much lost. No one really sure what exactly each moves are for. But in other styles, like Mantis, for example, right, which is a style that everyone still knows what each movement is used for. Now, I can say this because if you observe different lineages of, say, Plum Fall Mantis, they have more or less the same explanation. But if you observe different lineages of Tai Chi, even just chainsaw Tai Chi, everyone have different explanation to the single word application. And that would suggest no one actually knows for sure what's going on. But if I take Mantis, whether it's from Beijing, Shandong, or wherever else, if they're a palm flower, if they're doing the same form, they have a very similar explanation. There are minor differences, but it will not differ that much, okay? By that I mean, a move where you go like this, like that, and like that, no matter what lineage of Mantis it is, it's always going to be a luring hand, here, grab, and a side hook. So that's just to give you an example. So in those martial arts that we have correct understanding of application for, we can see that when we have a single combo, it's meant for one single purpose. It is not likely, I don't remember any instance where there's one fluid motion, like this for example, but each section is meant for something completely different, okay? When people designing a form, they will design a same combo together. So in this case, it will be here, there, there, there. When he blocks that, it will be here and there. It will be a bunch of moves for the same combo. It wouldn't be one move with 5 different applications. That is not the way human works when you come to design a form based on your fighting experience. Anything on that?
No, that's it.
Right, and as I said in the beginning, this doesn't only apply to Singapore, but it applies to a lot of stuff in the current Chinese martial arts society, which is why always be extra careful when looking through these applicational videos. Just because he can make sense on the surface doesn't mean he's giving you the right answer. You have to think deeper into this topic in order to see whether he or the source that he's using is just making up these explanations because they kind of fit, or they actually know what they're talking about. So always remember, just because something is possible doesn't make it probable. Right? Hope you enjoyed this episode of Kung Philosophy. If you enjoy my videos, please subscribe on my YouTube channels. And if you'd like to be updated whenever I upload a new video, click on the bell icon. That's the only way you'll be given a notice every time I upload a new video, and you therefore stay up to date with my latest content. And if you'd like to support me on Patreon, that would be greatly appreciated. And as always, I have great appreciation for all my Patreon supporters. Thank you guys so much. And I'd also like to give a special shout out to my 2 new Patreon supporters, Oliver Garrett, who has been a long-time Facebook friend of mine, and Anish. And I hope I'm not butchering your pronunciations. If I do, it's unintended. Welcome to my Patreon family. Always feel free to contact me with any questions regarding current content or suggestions for future content. Thank you so much for your support. Thanks for watching TriEssence martial arts channel. Stay safe out there, stay away from people if you can. Wait the pandemic out. And I'll see you next time. Thanks for watching.